at the time, the population of the island was less than 30,000 people, which, based on just those numbers in terms of weight to actual manpower, um, that's a more impressive feat than the pyramids in ancient Egypt. Aliens would be exciting, but also if it was a culture that was technologically way more advanced than we are currently, that would pose a follow-up question of like, when did they blow themselves up? Nan Madol, though, it's in the Pohnpei Islands in South Pacific island area.
Micronesia.
Micronesia,
Yeah.
in the South Pacific Island somewhere. I thought this was super interesting. I never heard of it until you brought it up. Really strange things. It's a ancient city that was built sometime between what was it, the 13th and 17th century?
Well,
Well, you know that ain't true.
So the archaeologists claim 1100 is like the long, like the far end on how,
Yeah.
but on how old it is. But there's a lot of evidence that's presented that has been presented that it's thousands of years old.
I have my theory, but
we know.
But look, this isn't just it's like artificial islands. We're talking about over 100 artificial islands created off the coast at a remote viewpoint of the world. Like, it's just random shit. And so, okay, this is going to be there for thousands of years or whatever. You go ahead and make your estimate, this and that. Regardless, it's there. It's not part of the natural landscape. And in totality, they think, the archaeologists and whatnot think, that all those stones add up to something like 250 million tons of stones. And we're talking about 14 layers high, or multiple stories high of houses, whatever. Just, we're going to build this here. Why would anyone build that there, and how would they ever build it there?
That's what's strange, is that where it was built, because it's almost like it's, if you look on a map, it's right off of the main like dry land of the island. And so I don't know if it was submerged, if it was partially underwater then, or like, it's really strange to look on a map because it is partially submerged underwater now, and it's something like 11 square miles. And all of it was black rock, I think, or salt rock.
Basalt was about,
and the closest location is the other side of the island that those rocks could have come from. And by archaeologists' standpoint, they didn't have any access to pulleys or levers or any type of actual like tools that could drag that shit over here or over to the other side of the island.
Right. Hold on one second, because all those rocks, which is just, if you look at the pictures, you Google this, Nan Madol, it's ridiculous. These long, huge, gigantic rocks just piled up so high that's unimaginable how it's possible. But
if you imagine, it's like Lincoln logged.
Yeah, right.
You know? It's 11 square miles of an ancient city that is Lincoln logged on itself. Logs are going this way, logs are going this way, logs are going this way,
right,
logs are going this way, you know.
But in terms of the material it's made out of, the local legend is that those things came from, like you said, like about 25 miles away from part of another island.
Well, it's north end of their island, right? They're on the south end where it's at, and there's at the north end, it's like 20 miles away.
Right. They're on, like, I think the southeast, right? And then the other part was northwest. Mm-hmm. Was it? Or but so local legend was those things were transported here, and legend also says locally that they were just flown there, kind of thing. And so that's one part we have to consider. Now, second part is it can now be scientifically verified that 40% approximately of the rocks that are there at this site, which is hundreds of islands, is from that location. You go to the location, there's definitely a quarry there in which advanced machinery had to be used to quarry this and ship it over 25 miles. However, the other 60% approximately of the stones cannot be scientifically recorded. They don't know where it came from. And so the local legend also is consistent with that. Those random ass stones just got flown there over the ocean and things like this. And so now we can't know where they're from, the stones, the other 60%, more than half the percent. And the local legends are consistent with that.
Well, also it was strange with the amount of weight that is estimated that the entire city is, and how many miles they had to transfer over. And I was reading somewhere that they're estimating at the time the population of the island was less than 30,000 people, which, based on just those numbers in terms of weight to actual manpower, that's a more impressive feat than the pyramids in ancient Egypt.
I mean, you look at, like, first of all, like, to our listeners, like, that are not familiar with this, just to reemphasize what some guy was saying. Like, in 100, or I don't know if it was
over 100,
but over 100 man-made islands that are part of this 11 mile structure off of the coast. It's insane. The other thing too is that, like, some of these, like, so you're looking at so when they said 250 million tons estimated, they're like, okay, well, what is that in? Because if it's gravel, it's like, well, shit, but over time it's possible, right? But like some of the bigger stones were estimated at 50 tons.
50 tons, yeah.
The heaviest cornerstone, and that heavy cornerstone is located on, I think, the main mortuary where they found a bunch of tombs.
And like the only way we could move that shit right now would be cranes, or if we use the ocean, would be with a barge, right? So
So just to cut you off, they actually did. I read this. They actually tried to mimic it in the early 90s, where they put a giant stone.
Like 1 ton, right?
It was 1 ton.
Yeah.
And the fucking thing sank.
They try to mimic the ways that they thought would work, and it would not work.
Well, just to cut you off, Mr. Green, there are 100% modern barges. They can.
I know modern barges.
Yeah, but
and the point is that that's how we do in the modern age. But there's nothing then they could hold a 50 ton.
Is there something? Those modern barges could hold a single 50 ton. What is the heaviest, or what's the weight limit for the strongest crane that we have? Do you know?
I remember reading that at least the barge could do a lot. They could do, like, I think
hundreds of tons.
100 tons. Really? Yeah, right.
Okay.
But
cranes.
Okay, so let's say
Googling it.
A scientist comes in which I saw things in which people from UCLA came in and said, let's analyze this modern day. And I said, okay, well, there's a fucking barge out there that can do 100 tons or whatever. Okay, so that's now, and they did that then. And so, it makes sense that random fools just like used ropes and shit. I'm sorry. Like, this is a perfect example, I feel like, in which scientific evidence can directly point towards the fact that you cannot do this unless you have advanced mechanisms for understanding physics.
And their local legends did. It was 2 brothers who were magicians. They used magic.
Mr. Green, to answer your question, 20,000 pounds. 20,000 tons. 20,000
Okay. Is
20,000 tons?
Is the heaviest that a crane has ever lifted.
20,000? That's crazy.
So put that in perspective. 20,000 tons of a modern day crane,
Which is not even half.
It's not even half of what they moved.
Of that one cornerstone.
Wait. 20,000 tons or 20,000 pounds? Because 20,000 tons is psycho.
44,000 pounds.
Okay, there you
go. That's fucking crazy. That we don't have.
We don't have.
We
it's
could
not
not
a thing.
do that.
We couldn't lift that one rock right now with the crane. The crane does not exist in our society.
That's fucking crazy.
And so why is it that people just want to keep dismissing this stuff when we have science and physics? Look, if you don't want to believe in physics, sorry, have fun climbing the stairs tonight when you go to bed or whatever, right? Like, I mean, it's just a fact, right? I mean, and so if we can show that through physics, that's the best we got, then how can you not think that there's some crazy ass shit going on back then? Especially, it's a random little bitch ass island somewhere randomly, and now it's just there. And we finally found it. We're like, what is this thing? You know?
Well, and on these islands, I was reading that there was no natural. I mean, they had to bring in fresh water and food every day to these islands. That there was no natural access based on their geographic location to food and fresh water, because they were like, on the outskirts of the main island, right? And there was no written language, so there's nothing written down about any stories about how it could have happened. I didn't read anywhere if they found any signs of carvings or tools anywhere on any of the side of the walls, or anything that they could relate to, like, actually, like, okay, this is probably use some type of cutting tool for these edges. Or
well, those German archaeologists went there, and like that whole thing where the archaeologists they disturbed that tomb, and then he died.
Yeah.
And they put all the evidence on a ship, and the ship sank.
Right.
It's like, well, like, I mean,
it makes early 20th century,
wonder,
right?
Yeah, it makes you wonder, like, was there any like tools or jewelry or any kind of like, like anything that would be archaeologically significant?
Yeah,
something that we could get some sort of like information about that culture.
And hasn't similar things happened to people, like kind of going into tombs in like ancient Egypt?
What do they call that? It's like the curse.
There's a curse over there with entering the tombs for sure in Egypt. But before I forget, I just want to go back to that story because you were just saying, because let's not just dismiss this as a random thing. It happened. This motherfucker went over there, tried to get into the tomb area, and in Nan Madol, that is, and then literally the next day died. And then all the stuff he supposedly excavated, the ship went down in the middle of the ocean. So let's just presume all that happened. It's not. So first of all, is that just purely coincidence? I guess it could be. It could be. But my guess is probabilistically not. And so you hear about these stories, like you say, in Egypt, and curses and whatnot on ancient burial grounds. Is there something that we are just not supposed to figure out? Are we not supposed to go to that place? Because curses is like folklore. It's spiritual, but it seems to really be some consistency to it, in my opinion. And in fact, the whole surrounding area of where Nan Madol is located, the locals do not go there. Yep. They consider it a place that is sacred and also cursed, kind of simultaneously, as that you don't go there, man. Just that's a place that you don't go to. So I feel like the reports are very consistent, and if that's actually happening, then what's actually going on?
It's definitely in terms of just numbers, of how many people they're estimated to have had and the weight of the stones, it's really shocking. And it's like, miles of 30 to 50 plus foot walls, and no one fucking knows what happened.
What I was thinking is like, I don't know, maybe you guys saw this too, but there's all these texts, these ancient texts of the flood, and I truly believe some kind of flood happened in history in which altered humankind, and perhaps there was even advanced civilizations that got wiped out and things like this. Every biblical religious text you can find has this shit. So could it be that Nan Madol was some kind of like prosperous city that lived on like a shoreline? You could import, export, something like that, and that flood shit happened. And now what it seems like is just mystery, but in fact, even though the building of it is still mystery, but maybe it's just the kind of random bullshit thing that we don't know anything about that's consistent with the floods. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's interesting. I was just reading that it was the German governor of that area at the time, because the island was under German rule, who went and like unsealed one of the coffins, and he died. Then they found him he was in delirium the next day, and then he died of unknown causes. Like the German doctor that was there could not determine how he died. But it was interesting. I just read that they said that when he opened the tomb, he said that the contents of the tomb was a giant 2 to 3 meters tall. Now 2 meters is average, not average height, but a totally reasonable height for a human being, but 3 meters, not so much. And that starts to kind of, although, who knows, right? I mean, like, my first thing would be like to think that maybe the locals like, hey, and you mess with our stuff and they poisoned him or something. Like, if you're going to go down the route of like, what could have happened that was non-supernatural, right? But a lot, we've talked a lot recently about different cultures at different times, especially 40,000 years ago. There were multiple different humanoid creatures, I don't know, human type species that were walking the earth. It's agreed upon by science, right? Like, it makes you wonder, found a tomb with and then like, did the tribe or did the people of the island, poison this guy and then, scuttle the ship to keep their culture, or because they disrespected their culture, or is there some sort of supernatural thing going on here?
Yeah, I was reading that it's kind of hard to get to have the local culture open up to you, that they're very protective and secretive. I don't know.
I mean, even if they did do that, even if they did, for instance, poison this guy because they're like, well, you got these Western invaders taking our land, and then they come and mess with our stuff, so poison this guy. Even if that were true, there's still like, their story about the rocks being floated over the island. There's still like this strange 9-foot skeleton in a tomb.
Well, and how about let's just relate Easter Island,
right?
Okay, because Easter Island is another random ass island in the middle of fucking nowhere, right? And so similar things I feel like happened at Easter Island. Traditions, giants, floating objects, things like this. And it's not just these two places. You can go around, and if you do enough research, there's things out there, especially with folklore and mythology and stuff. These are parts of history that kind of get thrown on the wayside that I believe play a really crucial factor in what our understanding is. And so Easter Island, random bullshit things like this in many ways. Not the same, obviously, but big ass fucking objects are humongous that the tradition says they were floated there and they originated with giants. And there's other traditions on planet Earth with the giants. There's even been skeletal remains in which giants seem to be. Why are these random giant creatures that are humanoid buried here? No one wants to talk about that. No one wants to talk about that shit.
Coral Castle. I mean, how did he move all the? Talk about him floating those rocks. How did he move all?
Yeah, but he wasn't a giant per se, right? This whole giant thing.
But he did say he unlocked some sort of secret from how ancient rocks are moved and all these other big things.
I think there's definitely, it seems to be a recurring thing, right? There's got to be a way that you could just get rocks and fucking big ass heavy objects and just move wherever you want. There's got to be a way, because how else would all these things exist? Random ass little islands. We'll just make our own island. Fuck it, with rocks. It's crazy. I don't know, man. It's just, we better focus more on the prince of. That's just whatever the fuck.
I mean, like, it always kind of comes back to me with some of these rocks being moved, some of these stones, right? Like okay, how did they do it? Because it's people. I think that's why it gets brushed off. You're talking about being brushed off. Is the people just be like, oh, they must have been some sort of like, some sort of like, ancient technology that they, they understood, in a different way that we do, and they moved that stuff. But I don't think people really think about it, because if you did, and you really think about like what 1 ton is, like if all of us, and if our other fellow was here with us, try to lift up half ton, we would not be able to do it. The 5 of us would not be able to do it. Maybe if it was flattened out and like a flat piece of wood or something like that was that much weight, we could all lift because it's a couple hundred pounds. But a rock, there's no way like we're gonna be able to all get around, and then maybe like in an emergency, if it was on top of someone, we can move it, right? That's half a ton. 1 ton, there's no way. There's just no way.
Well, one ton is 2,000 pounds.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Half a ton, if there's 5 of us, like 200 pounds each, we could maybe move it. But a rock could be super, super hard, because you have to gather around, get all small and try to lift. It'd be like almost impossible. Maybe doable, but that's 200 pounds. Now you're looking at trying to lift 400 pounds, like a 400-pound rock each person. Maybe like the only mechanics I personally could do 400 pounds, and my best would be deadlifting it. And like, there's no bar on these rocks. You're not gonna be able to square yourself up and get your feet lifted right, and no way, dude. So everybody's gonna bend over and lift 400 pounds. No fucking way. So like that's 1 ton with 5. Now these rocks are pretty small too. How many people can you gather? I mean, they're not small, but sizably, how many people can you gather around it? So you take perspective and you look at 5 tons, right? Right. And so we're looking at how
50
many
tons.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like you're not just lifting it up like at shoulder height. I mean, some of these fucking walls are over 50 feet high.
Well,
off the deck.
I'll have to say this too. I've been redoing my front yard, and part of what I've been doing is bringing in some pretty big rocks, for decoration purposes, build some landscaping around, whatnot. Now, let's just here's a rock. They say this thing weighs 250 pounds. Now, I can get it and kind of roll it over, that kind of shit. Now, I tend to think of myself as pretty strong upper body. Like, I do a lot of upper body workouts and stuff like that. Could I pick up that rock if it was 250 pounds and it wasn't a rock, even for like a second or something? Maybe. But you remember these rocks, they're not just like uniform in shape. These rocks are weird ass rocks. And now, unless you somehow magically cut them with magical material to make them super perfect uniform, most rocks that you're going to encounter ain't going to be like that. And so you have to remember the weight distribution of a random big ass rock is not the same as what you think of when you think of picking up some big ass object that's just like uniformly distributed in weight. right? And so these motherfuckers, they did whatever. They just did whatever. We'll just make this rock, that rock. Doesn't matter. Who's there? Who's even living there in the first place in Madol? They fishing? There ain't nobody there. Man, it's crazy.
It's just unfortunate that like it's one of those things that like I think all we can do is theorize, but chances of anybody actually finding out how they were actually built.
But who even knows about this shit? That's what I'm saying. No
Yeah,
one knows. You
this
talk
is
about the
definitely-
random fool on the street. Hey, Starbucks, blah, blah. How you doing? Do you know about Nan Madol? What the fuck? You know, they don't nobody know about this shit.
No, this is definitely one of those quieter spots.
Shit, I mean, if you didn't live like within a close vicinity to Coral Castle and you knew about it because you lived there, like I mean, until we started looking into it, I didn't know about it just off the top of my head.
Yeah.
You know, like
But
fucking a lot of these
I
places,
would, I
dude.
would.
Yeah.
But yeah. But what I'm saying is like the normal population. Most fools don't even think twice about anything shit we talk about ever, regardless if it's this or that, or, you know, they just be like, put me on the TikTok, let me get some views. I'm famous. Yeah, I'm cool. You know, and it's like, where's the focus, dude?
There's no, I mean, nobody's gonna care, first of all, about this shit. Like to them, it's like, you know, some boring ass history. And then even if you like sat like the average person down who's like normally spends their like day looking through Instagram, if you sat that person down and explained what this really was, they'd be like, oh, it's crazy. That's it.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, this is like some of the things, like it's evidence that either there was a culture of humans that was significantly more technologically capable than we are now, or is extraterrestrial.
And both are shocking.
Yeah.
Both answers would be completely and totally shocking, especially if I mean both. The aliens would be exciting, but also if it was a culture that was technologically way more advanced than we are currently, that would pose a follow-up question of like, when did they blow themselves up? You know, or what war,
which
or
may happen.
What war or what disease killed them all and wiped out any evidence of their advancement besides just the actual structures? Because like, dude, those people built shit to last, dude. How much?
I think about
like, think about how many buildings would still be around in, you know, 2,000 years of what we make.
Oh yeah,
look at what we
now.
make now, dude. Look at like parts of like just inner cities, man. I mean, if you go to like Detroit, if you go to Chicago, if you go to parts of like Oakland, I mean, shit is crumbling, and it's just been like a couple years. You know, there's a building in San Francisco that was built so wrong, it's fucking tilting.
Yeah, well, part of that is those was just.
Well, part of that
fucked it up, dude.
Part of that is you have a city of San Francisco that's built on pretty much a giant mud pile.
Yeah, it's like a garbage pile. But but too bad they should have known that before they built it. Built 100-story high building or whatever the hell it is, right?
Fucking crazy.
I mean, dumbasses.
But they built things to last, though.
You think about the Rome, you know, in Rome fell, dude. Like you had this like highly technological society. I know we've talked about the aqueducts. We talked about them developing what was basically the first computer that was calculating the orbits, I believe. Do you remember that, Mr. Green? The Rome.
I know what you're talking about.
Right? Yeah, I think it was calculating the orbits of certain stars, maybe or planets. Anyways, is it basically the first computer? So like you have this technical. My point is you have this really far ahead technologically society, and then basically they got caught slipping, and over the course of 500 years they basically lived off of their original achievements, and the downfall eventually happened and they were taken down by a bunch of Christian barbarians, right? And when that shit happened, I mean, I'm simplifying it, but it's generally what happened. Like libraries in Rome were just burnt down as heathen, right? So all this crazy technology was lost. And that's like in like, I mean, yeah, to us, you're talking like, you know, 1,000 years ago, but in like, you know, in the history of like our planet existing, that's like, a pinprick, right? It's like a drop in the bucket. And like so it's highly feasible that that's happened 1,000 times even. It absolutely could have, and basing a lot of our evidence of what we believe has existed on Earth, as far as like, humans or other creatures, based off of like fossils and stuff we found. We know they existed, but definitely there's a time limit on stuff, right? Time limit on bones, fossils.
Well, how about this though? Like, let's just say those civilizations existed, and what record they keep of their knowledge. Now, is it possible that they were slipping, in the sense that we only kept our knowledge in certain ways, such that we didn't think if someone did this, it would just destroy everything, right?
100%. Rome
And
was falling for like 500 years, dude. Like, they were just like lazy fucks, dude. Seriously, and they just lived off their like own legend until eventually they just crumbled.
but not just Rome, right? I mean, think of the Egyptian culture. Go back to Teotihuacan. Lots of places on Earth in
Current
general
American culture.
don't have records of how the things happened. And so, is it because they got like wiped out, and this, because you know how it goes? People somehow think, oh, I'm better than you, and they're going to wipe out your culture, wipe out your history. It happens in the Middle East all the time. Things like this, where that's a thing of warfare, is that, right? We got you, and now your historical record on planet Earth is gone. You never existed, right? And how many times that happened in
That's what I'm
history?
saying. It's crazy to think about.
And that's what's crazy, is that like, because all of our knowledge is stored on hard drives and clouds, right? That's just not going to last. You know what I mean? Like if you
Crystals.
yeah.
I'm serious. You know that it's been proven fact that crystals, giant crystals. I mean, we're talking about there's places on Earth that's found in caves and shit where like one crystal is like 14 feet long or something, right? And there are billions of them all over the shit. The point is, like, we know how to store information on crystals. And so a lot of these rocks around the world made out of quartz crystal, right? One way or another, the granite and all that stuff. And if we know now that information can be stored on a crystal, one day that might not be indestructible, right? You might not be able, you can't burn that shit down. What would you use to destroy the information in the crystal? But in the meantime, everything gets fucked. Who's going to find that crystal that has all the information on it? You know what I mean? And so, is that out there?
Maybe.
I think it's quite possible it might be out there. Some shit like that,
I
would like to think it's aliens.
I mean, it feels like it. It's either that or like, I know I've already said it twice, but fucking, the Coral Castle, he said that he used an ancient technique to move stuff utilizing sound. And these guys in this island are both ancient, and they move stuff in floating manner the same way that he was suspected to have moved those rocks. So, I mean, maybe that's what it is. Maybe there is.
Again, I said that then, I'll say it now. That selfish prick kept that secret to himself.
Yeah, I know. I have that recorded, you saying that. Yeah, I know. Seriously. Interesting about that, that always blows my mind, is that the FBI creeping around. I think they got his little box that he had his like secret tools and shit in. And whether or not it was legit or not. But I mean, same thing, right? Even a couple miles, no evidence of anybody helping him. Rocks that are in the tons and tons, right? Impossible for a human to move on their own, without equipment. And that happened in modern times. So, looking at like maybe there is something to this ancient method of moving things, utilizing sound. and maybe it is something that they figured out. When they built Nan Madol, which is interesting because I wish they would have written it down because that was useful.
But why
no
is
written
it?
language.
Yeah, I mean, why is it that all these places? I mean, you think beyond Egypt. Egypt obviously has crazy amount of historical written stuff, but a lot of these places don't have that. And so why is it? Why is it? And how could they accomplish those things without having some historical record of?
Yeah,
But-
and out of everything that the Egyptians have written down, they didn't write down the instructions for the pyramids, did they?
That we know of for sure, yeah.
That we
They're
know.
probably like, yeah, these fools will know how to do it. I mean, they'll be way
They
more
could
advanced
figure
than
it
us.
out. Yeah, it's
Dude, the other thing too is that like with that the sound thing is like, I mean, if it's something that's kind of specific to one culture, like how come like people are moving these stones in South America and
Easter Island,
Yeah.
Nan Madol. Come
Yeah.
on, exactly.
that's a big question. Like how did this technology, get like, how the fuck did it get to Nan Madol? Which is like what 600 miles? Do you guys remember? It was like 600 miles, and there's nothing in 600 miles in any direction. Like,
Yeah.
it's like,
I forgot
remember that.
how close the nearest I
No, I'm pretty sure you're right. 600 miles in any direction. Now I seen one where a guy came in and he was an actual like a material scientist, and they asked him even one little doorway in this giant millions of things that they did in Nan Madol. There's like a doorway, and it had the exact structure that we use now in current technologies. You put the beam and all the stuff, except the beam weighed like fucking 15 tons. All right. And like, okay, what mathematics would you need to use this to do this? Like, how would you figure this shot out? It's like perfectly, it's like bent almost the rock. And so it's clearly like some very high level calculus. Now, me doing what I do, high level calculus, schmaculus. But random human being, not the same. Now let's go back thousands of years. Random guy. Well, yes, we'll just fill out their calculus a bit. Give me a break. It's ridiculous to think that these fools just like, we're gonna cut this and move it on a boat. And you know what I'm saying? It's ridiculous.
Math didn't exist at that point. At least there's no historical record of anybody being able to do anything with calculus. Was it 1700s, right? I think that's what they said.
That was 1100, but
no. When did calculus? When was calculus?
Oh, calculus. Yeah, 1700. Yeah.
1700s. So yes. I mean, like, yeah, maybe they figured it. Maybe they figured it out. But then you start to kind of piece all this stuff together. You're like, okay, well, like they had to have had all of these specific technologies in order to have been able to, complete this act. They had to know calculus. They had to.
How would you think? Yeah.
To lift more weight than we can now. Like,
just understanding what I do to understand what work is. Work is the study of energy required to complete a task. Think of any task ever, a mosquito flying on a path on Earth or whatever the fuck. We have the mathematics to model it. It's crazy shit. And to think that these fools are like, nah, I'm just going to do the figure it out. It's just unbelievable. Seriously, I mean, just being my background, it's unbelievable that someone like they did that, and they're just like old people that pick.
Well, and you just wonder, like, with all of, just because it's so exposed to the natural elements, that it still existed. That out of all of the different tsunamis that have gone on, out of all the earthquakes, out of everything, it is right there along the coast, man. The fact that it's still up there.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes this place is considered as the 8th wonder of the world, because I don't think a lot of people know about this place. And to be 100 artificial islands, more than that, made up of this amount of random crazy ass stone that no one could do now to move it, and we just go, oh yeah, it's just blah. It's just just blah. It's just-
Now,
Yeah.
if you think it was aliens,
I never seen
really let your imagination go. What's the point?
Well, there is the theory that there were a lot of different places on Earth that were used as kind of like stations in a way for them to. I know, like
Teotihuacan?
yeah, Teotihuacan. They used.
that. Oh shit! You didn't see what I saw.
No, I didn't see. what
You
you
guys
said.
were at slow mo, and this motherfucker with the bare face was just like this for like a minute alone. Oh, yeah, like that. Yeah, and I probably my internet sucks. Sorry.
Teotihuacan, like I mean, that'd be like one theory would be like that they like if they used this place, it used our planet as either like a gas station, like a rest stop, dude, or just like as a vacation. If it was like, I mean, that, like literally, some of these places could have been like vacation homes.
I could
That's
totally
crazy
see
about-
Earth being used as a rest stop where you got to
Yeah.
fill up the tank, grab some snacks, and take a dump.
Yeah.
And just-
How about